From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Mark Blunden, and this is The Standard.
The whole roof, or the vast majority of the roof, was sheet glass with mirrors, and then coming down the void, if you will, was just incredibly clever mirrors and lighting. At the time, it was 16 million.
House prices, a constant source of stress and wonder for many Britons, and in London, are they going up, down, and where's best to buy? Are doors shut for first-time buyers, or are there relatively still good deals to be had? In this edition of the Standard podcast, we will examine the current picture in the capital. The latest Halifax figures show an average UK drop in property prices of almost £3,000 per transaction, but in London, Nationwide says prices are up by 1.2%. Why? First, we're joined by India Block, who's Deputy Editor of the Standard's Homes and Property section. India, what's the current state of London's property sales market?
We've had a very positive start to the year, but that is more the market finally coming round after the sucker punch of Liz Truss's mini budget. So many of the problems in all areas of the market were really escalated. Obviously, we had a pre-existing housing crisis, but because of inflation, because the Bank of England responded with those 14 consecutive rate hikes, with the base rate now at about 5.25%, mortgages have just comparatively to where they were pre-pandemic, just gone through the roof. They were hitting the kind of 6, 7, 8% point at one moment. So anyone looking to buy, anyone coming off a fixed term mortgage, anyone in a rental property whose landlord had a mortgage, suddenly found costs just escalating wildly out of control at the same time as a cost of living crisis. So that's really what pushed house prices down so much last year, which is very unusual for London, for prices to be falling.
And who's buying?
We really predicted that 2024 would be a big year for first-time buyers. Agents had already been telling us that they were becoming their biggest customer base in some parts of London, and that's beyond buy-to-let buyers, second steppers, downsizers. Half the houses bought in London so far this year have been by first-time buyers, so people who've never owned before, who are finally getting onto the ladder. They tend to be a bit older than they were 10 years ago, and they are buying smaller, cheaper homes, and they're having to spend more on less space. So in the long run, whether that's healthy is questionable, because if you're buying a house, if you're hoping to start a family, or if you want to upsize at some point, you might be upsizing a bit sooner than you would have in the past.
With these two sets of figures from Halifax showing the UK decrease and Nationwide's London increase, could you give us some context, please?
London's market is very different to the rest of the UK. It's also got a lot of micro markets within that. So if you're just looking at averages across the whole city, it's not going to be your most accurate look into what's happening. But basically, demand in London is so high, land prices are so much higher, and there's a lot less stock coming onto the market. So inflation in the house prices here is happening much faster. So if a house comes onto the market, then there's just more people interested in buying it. The demand is up. So the house prices are recovering much faster in London than they are in the rest of the UK.
And are there any bargains at all to be had, particularly for first-time buyers?
I think it would always be a stretch to call a London house price a bargain, or even affordable. But when renters have been so squeezed, if you can get on the ladder, you might be looking at less a month that you're paying on your housing. The outer boroughs are definitely the cheaper ones. Croydon and Barking and Dagenham are constantly topping the affordability charts currently. There's also places such as Forest Gate and E7, Manor Park and E12. Now that they have the Lizzie line, they're far more commutable. So if people are going back into the office, that is a better option sometimes. Lee and E27, Crystal Palace, Hampton, Teddington, which is out in Zone 6, has seen a huge rise in demand currently. There are going to be compromises. This is also why we're seeing the interlocking crisis of schools in areas such as Hackney. Young families are being driven out of the more central or more traditional London areas. So it's definitely in the outer boroughs that home buyers are going to find properties that are more within their price range if they're a first-time buyer.
What about the very top of the market?
The top of the market operates on a completely different scale. You've got your sort of prime properties that are anything over sort of 2 million, and then super prime, which is the sort of 10 million pound mark. They've been really hit for the past couple of years, really, by Brexit, economic uncertainty, political uncertainty. It's very unclear sort of what the tax rules are going to look at for overseas buyers. A lot of these people are buying in cash, so they might not be affected by the mortgage and the interest rates, but some of them are. Some of them have been getting big mortgages on big properties. So prices have come down a little bit. So I think we might be seeing a few uber wealthy bargain hunters. The president of the UAE, I mean, this went through November 2023. It's just come to light. Bloomberg reported on it first. He has bought a mansion in Chelsea for £65 million. It's a fairly new build mansion, actually, but that is a massive sale.
And what have been some of the standout, unusual properties you've written about recently?
I'm personally a big fan of mid-century design, but there's been some really exciting, fixer-uppers, you could say. Number 12 Cathcart Road in Chelsea, that was built in the 1950s by Wallace Gilbert and Partners, so you might know them. They built the Hoover Building out in Ealing, the Victoria Coach Station. It still has the original kitchen in it, which is very exciting. It's been only in 2 families in the property's entire lifetime. And it has a huge garden as well. I spoke to the owners. They suspect that part of that road was damaged by bombs in the wall, which is why they have this massive garden that you really wouldn't find anywhere else in Chelsea. That is £8 million though, so you'd also have to have very deep pockets to be doing that one up.
Let's go to the ads coming up. How the other half live inside London's multi-million pound homes market with property consultant Alex Goldstein. Why not hit follow in the meantime and give us a rating? Welcome back. Now we're joined by Alex Goldstein, who's Managing Director of Alex Goldstein Property Consultants. Alex, could you give us an overview of your business and who are your typical clients?
I'm fairly unusual. I have a fairly extensive corporate career in estate agency, so with the big names out there. I left just over 10 years ago to set up on my own and spotted a niche in the market. So I help people buy property. I also help them sell property, but not as an estate agent. It's very much advisory, giving them the inside track, how to maximize value and advice on which agent to go with. But my clients vary hugely. A lot of the time it's sort of families, it's personal moves, it's entrepreneurs. I've dealt with sports personalities, very high profile individuals and families that need high levels of confidentiality. And I suppose most uniquely about where I sit into the market is I'm based in Harrogate in Yorkshire, and I cover the whole of Yorkshire, but I also cover the whole of London, i.e. within the M25. And I also, for the higher value items, also go into the home counties because that's my background and training. And that's where I grew up as well.
How's the London market looking for you and where's hot right now?
If one is looking in, for example, prime central London, I think prices have significantly come back. I think one of the statistics being sort of muted out there is prime central London dropped about 8% last year, and it's taking a bit of time to recover, in my opinion, where I'm sort of sitting into the market. So depending on your angle, obviously, if you're a buyer, and I've got a good number of internationally based buyers that want to come back home. They're based abroad post-COVID. They want to come back, and there's a reason why. Often it's family. They want to be closer to their parents or it's schooling, but they're buying in dollars. And at the moment, that's an added bonus. You've obviously, if you're looking in prime central London, the prices have come back. And if you can negotiate from a position of strength because you're proceedable, then away you go.
And beyond the centre?
If, however, you're then looking beyond core central London, there are some interesting hotspots at the moment. And this is obviously very much a sort of a revolving cycle. I think one of the key ones at the moment in more central London is, of course, King's Cross, with Meta and Google head offices going in and a huge amount of employment and investment in the area. Pimlico as well has really sort of come up the rankings, both in terms of transport, value for money as well. And then if you start sort of just pushing slightly further out, Wembley, for example, is one of the largest regeneration projects in the UK at the moment. But then equally, you've got this move, dare I say, beyond Wimbledon. There is such a thing. And people are sort of picking up on the commuter belt areas, the likes of the Windsors, Maidenheads, Uxbridges, and those connected on the Elizabeth line. It's interesting that where is the London market heading? Because at the end of the day, who is now buying in London? A lot of the people, the international buyers, they're not necessarily here back in full force at the moment. A lot of them have been wooed over to the Middle East and they're all buying in Bitcoin for all sorts of reasons. When and where is the London market going to sort of kick in again? That's the big question.
What are some of the external factors impacting your clients' strategies currently?
As with all things, it's a number of factors. I think that some vendors, sellers, and indeed buyers, they're just leaning slightly back. And all these things that are going on in the world, and it's not a particularly nice world that we're in at the moment, is just playing on people's minds. So yes, the talk of interest rates coming down, I personally feel it's going to come down 0.25% between now and the end of the year. I've got banking connections that feel that it's going to come down 3 different points throughout the year, but who's right, we don't know. There's talk of when the general election is going to be. Is it going to be September? Is it going to be early next year? And you've got that concern. You've got the whole Ukraine crisis and the US and UK economies, and all of this is just playing into people's psyche and going, you know what, more often than not now, people, because of the expense, are buying in long term, no longer. And I cannot remember the last time someone said, Alex, I want to buy this property and I'm going to be there for 3 years, turn it around and straight back out. More often than not, where I sit in the market and the clients I deal with, we're talking 10 years absolute minimum, 15 to 20, it's forever home stuff. And they're just momentarily sort of pausing for thought. I think once this general election is announced and people know where they stand, confidence instantly comes back. And then I think you're going to see sort of just activity across the board pick up quite a lot.
Finally, you have to give us a glimpse through the keyhole of one of your recent negotiations.
Absolutely. What one in particular that stands out for me is incredibly impressive townhouse in Belgravia, tucked away, very discreet address. And wait for it, it had a glass elevator going down through all the floors. And when you went in on the ground floor, there was a window by the door, but there were no other windows on the ground floor. And you wouldn't know it, and you didn't immediately sort of click that that was the case, but the whole roof, or the vast majority of the roof, was sheet glass with mirrors. And then coming down the void, if you will, was just incredibly clever mirrors and lighting. And it was all lit up, but you'd never know it. And it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the rest, and the views at the top. It was just outstanding.
And what was the list price?
At the time, it was 16 million.
There's much more news and features in the Evening Standard newspaper and online at standard.co.uk. We're back on Monday at 4 p.m.